It's Mike with It's Pittsfield Tonight. I'm here with one of our at-large city councilors, Pete White. Uh, Many of you, I'm sure, know Pete, and Pete is also running for re-election this year. But to those that don't know you, Pete, if you want to just go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right, my name is Pete White. I'm the City Council Vice President, and as you said, currently Councilor at Large, running to be re-elected as Councilor at Large. Born and raised here in Pittsfield, local schools, and I just really enjoy being able to serve the people of Pittsfield and being able to work with them on the things that concern them and continuing to make Pittsfield a better place to be.
Awesome. And I'm going to ask you the same thing I've asked everyone. Is there any one particular issue or something that happened in your life that made you decide to run for city politics?
Yeah, I was able to work with fellow students out at BCC, Berkshire Community College, to help get a elevator put in the library for better disability and senior access to the stacks downstairs. And that's what really made me think and find out that politics and government was a way that you could help people.
So
and
on
I
that,
ran for council. Yeah,
the outcome of that though was you ended up getting the elevator in, and that happened.
Yeah, we got $250,000 from acting Governor Jane Swift at the time, and Department of Capital Asset Management came out, through, it was a long process to get it approved. And a lot of people thought we were never going to get it done, but they said, yeah, sure, you can try. But we had a compelling case. We had a student, one of our classmates that was a wheelchair user, and we had her really show them what the issues were. And we got the elevator put in probably back around 2003. And it really just made me want to get more involved in trying to find ways of helping people.
Yeah, that's awesome. I imagine once you see that you can, that would motivate you more.
Yeah. It was a lot harder getting involved and actually getting elected than I thought it was going to be. But since the first time I ran back in 2003, I've found different ways to stay involved with different committees, working with different candidates, working on different issues, supporting a lot of union causes, worker rights causes, making sure that working families had what they needed, along with, social issues, and just trying to make, our area more livable.
Now, coming out of this weird, crazy time, which is one of the most unique times ever in the city's history, the only time I was discussing this with some of the new councilors, that their whole first term, for the first time in the city's history, they were in council chambers twice. Yeah. Talking to your constituents going into another election year, after spending the last term not being able to attend in person the council meetings, what are the big issues or the big things you're hearing from your constituents that are driving this election?
I don't know how much it'll drive the election, but the thing we always hear most about is infrastructure, roads, sidewalks, and then we get into how good our schools are, housing issues, whether it be people who have found themselves homeless or people who want to find rentals, to people just trying to afford being in the houses they have now, and trying to find a balance of how do we serve all of these different populations and, serve everyone at the same time while still being able to afford to do a little of all of it.
Did you find in the middle of the pandemic it being more challenging? Were there any other issues that as a counselor you were dealing with constituents that were because of the pandemic?
I think because of the pandemic, people were, obviously job loss and being able to keep businesses open, making sure that, people knew about the resources that were out there if they did lose their job because of the pandemic. But also we saw this housing boom where houses were selling for way over asking price, and trying to make sure that there were still projects going on or things out there that we still need to go further with, for people who have always been from Pittsfield to be able to stay in Pittsfield. And we definitely have more work that needs to be done, pushing for more workforce housing, affordable housing, and seeing how do we take where we've been, especially with the moratoriums ending on, evictions and everything else, and making sure that everyone has a chance to survive here in Pittsfield.
Are you hearing some of that about people being evicted, or maybe the other side of it too, the landlords?
I've seen some landlords who were struggling before. I think some of them were able to get aid. But for some people who are evicted, they've either become homeless or some have been able to find apartments. But it's been more of a struggle than ever. And we need to keep that on the forefront of any future projects going through. Not to say that we're not going to continue to add to market rate housing, but also to make sure that, hopefully through I think it's through a housing trust, might be getting the exact language wrong, but there's money being put aside for affordable housing projects to be done if they can't put 20% of their new apartments into that range naturally.
Do you think this also being an election year, do you think the pandemic has affected this year at all, or do you think it will be back to normal, door knocking, signs, all the same?
I think it depends on whether or not people getting vaccinated. I know for myself, I'm half vaccinated. I will be more comfortable being out sometime mid-June, but there may be a lot of people, and I've heard from a lot of people that are not going to be comfortable having people knock on their doors. And it's going to be tougher, I think, for the new candidates coming up. That's why I'm glad that you're having them on. And I hope other, members of the media will have them on as well to give them that opportunity. For me, when I had to collect my 150 signatures, I was able to reach out through people through Facebook and Messenger, or picking up the phone and saying, hey, can I stop by, if you're comfortable with that. If a new candidate doesn't have those, people that they can reach out to for that natural base, they may have a much harder time doing it. And I hope that people watching your show will reach out to some of those new candidates and say, hey, I live in your ward. Can I sign your papers? Or you're running at large or for school committee. Can I sign your papers? And I hope that people reach out, because it is going to be a much more difficult year, regardless of what goes on for new candidates. I think for some of us who are established, people know who we are. We have communication through, being on our council meetings, and also through, I use a lot of Facebook. I love interacting with people, going out and collecting signatures. It was great even, handing somebody the clipboard and stepping away so you're still 6 feet away. You're both masked. It was great talking to people. So I hope people get to know the new candidates in all of the races and are willing to sign their papers so we can get them on the ballot, so we can have debates and forums to get to know who should be representing, in these roles.
I agree. And I've mentioned this a few times. As you know, in 2017, that was the first we had the council elections without a mayor on the ticket. And the turnout was atrocious. It barely hit 20% of our registered voters. And that is a concern of mine, that this year, because you take the history of the last one, and then you add the pandemic this time, that is a concern that the participation rate is going to be low. So
yeah, participation is always a challenge in races, and especially midterm elections. It can also be seen as an opportunity for a newcomer to really get out there, outwork people who who take things for granted and who might not be listening to people, and maybe make a name for themselves just by being out there and talking to more people. So I hope that we get the numbers up higher than 20%. But we've seen for a long time that it's difficult to get people out for races. I think election fatigue is real, on top of COVID fatigue and everything else. But it seems we're in constant campaign cycles for either state elections, federal elections, city elections. And I think a lot of times people just say it's really difficult to make a choice of who to decide on, so they stay out of it. And, if local elections have the biggest impact on your life every day. So I wish we were seeing huge turnouts for the municipal elections versus only seeing huge turnouts when we have a presidential election happening.
Yeah, I agree. Imagine being able in a local election to hit that 50%. I mean, that would be amazing. But I think even the mayors, this last one with the mayoral election, that one had a lot of publicity. And that I think barely cracked 40%, barely.
I'm hoping that we see some of these, being able to vote by mail or early voting. I think early voting is the best, because it gives people a couple weeks before an election to come in and vote. I love early elections. I think they should be permanently in place. I think with making voting more accessible to people, we could get numbers up, and I hope that the state allows those things to happen, and that we really keep pushing for them, because having an election on one day is just ludicrous to me. You
It
should
is,
have multiple chances to vote.
because anything can happen. Someone can be sick that day. Anything can happen. So I agree. If you could be in labor having a baby and there's no way you can go vote, but want to participate. So I definitely agree with that. There's a lot of different reasons that people don't when it's one day. And I've always been a proponent of, I think election days should be a paid holiday. The only days that should.
I wouldn't be against it being a paid holiday, but we know, I think more than ever in this last year, that there are people who even for paid holidays can't take those days off, because there are some businesses that just can't close. So I think, making it a holiday is fine, but I think maintaining early voting where somebody can go into City Hall for at least 2 weeks before an election is the way to go. And having, I love that the city clerk has opened up the, City Hall on weekends to vote. I think I voted on a Saturday.
Is City Hall open yet?
City Hall, I think, is open on Tuesday and Thursdays, from at least 8:30 or 9 to 12:30. And I think you'll see new openings coming now that CDC is easing regulations. But I think having for voting open up at least on a Saturday for people who work during the week, but having it open, a good amount for voting will get those numbers up. And I love having more people participate. Being elected by a small percentage of the elected voters doesn't feel as good as it would knowing that you're backed by a majority of the city. And even if people don't vote, it's not like I've ever checked, oh, you didn't vote, I'm not going to listen to you when someone contacts me on an issue or a concern. You represent all the people once you're in office. Once the campaign's behind you, it doesn't matter as much. I want more people to vote, but I'm never going to say, you're not a registered voter, I'm not going to help you. We have to be there for everyone.
So that being said, in closing, what would you say to your constituents then on why you should be reelected? And please make sure you give out your contact information. I'll put your Facebook and all that up on the screen for you too.
Yeah, I am asking people to vote for me as one of your 4 choices for Councilor at Large, because I've listened to you, I communicate with you. Even during the pandemic, I've tried to have a lot of outreach to my constituents and stay involved in listening to them, whether it's email, where people can get me at the letter P, WHITE, P White at cityofpittsfield.org, or calling me 413-464-9044, or hitting me up on either my personal Facebook page or my Councilor at Large Facebook page. I want to keep the communication flowing both ways. If I don't hear from you, I don't know how you want me to look at things. And if I don't vote necessarily how you asked me to vote on something, it doesn't mean that I ignored you. Whatever you say to me has an impact on the decisions I make. And we need to have that back and forth communication. I appreciate everyone throughout the pandemic contacting me through social media and calling me and emailing me. And I'm really looking forward to seeing people in person again, so we can have those conversations over coffee at farmers markets and just, you know, anywhere we might see each other. I know most supermarket conversations have gone much longer than they used to, because I think people are just happy to be seeing people again. And I always love hearing what the people of Pittsfield are looking for their leaders to do.
Awesome. And one last thing that I've asked everyone, and no one has said no yet, so I'm hoping you don't. But I plan on doing some online debates or forum style, not traditional debates, but to put all the candidates out there, really to give you guys as much exposure as possible. Is that something you'd be willing to participate in?
Of course, I would love to participate in that, and I hope a lot of others, that have followers like it's Pittsfield Tonight does that, because having free media access and just ways to talk to people, you're doing a service for the people of Pittsfield by providing that. So of course I'll take part in that.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Pete. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope we can do, more videos like this. I'll be reaching out to you to bug you and all that, to see if you can come back on.
You're never bugging me, Mike. I always love catching up with you.
Awesome. Thank you very much again, Councilor White, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.